Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into an incredibly important topic: how we show up in the workplace, from navigating corporate bullying to building healthier team dynamics and emotionally intelligent leadership. I'm joined by someone who brings deep insight and heart to these conversations, Warren Munitz, a founder of Integrative coaching. Warren's work focuses on helping individuals and leaders explore consciousness, develop self-mastery, and live with greater presence, purpose, and emotional clarity. Let's get started. Imagine someone named Sarah who's been in her company for 5 years. Her manager regularly singles her out in meetings, uses a condescending tone, and often takes credit for her work. It's not outright aggression, but it's wearing her down. What does corporate bullying actually look like in situations like this, and how does it often go unnoticed?
I think there's so many different situations that, and people react differently. So what is corporate bullying? You look on ChatGPT and see what it says. But I think what's more important is how we are responding in the moment to our experience that we're having. So I don't know if it's valuable always to label what's happening, because that will put you in a mindset with a whole field of beliefs about what's happening to you, as opposed to actually checking in with yourself. The experience you're having is always going to give you insight into where you are being triggered, and that allows you to see where your trauma, your unresolved, unconscious content lies to deal with. It's not to point out or to label, which I think seems to be the culture in what's happening now. Everyone's pointing and it's all about offended, and I think we're missing the point. It's a mirror to self-reflect what is happening with you. We're not denying certain things that happen are disagreeable, but we want to learn, how do we navigate through this space that is extremely challenging, especially when stress is high. And in business, that's the reality. We are trying to succeed in a sea of people who are also trying to succeed. And so as much as we can, we need to own our own experience. That's my suggestion with that.
Great. So let's say James receives sharp, direct feedback from his boss. He's unsure whether it's just performance pressure or if it's emotionally damaging. How can someone tell the difference between tough feedback and emotional abuse in the workplace?
It's very similar to the previous question, where it comes to, you must check where that trigger lands. If you work on what you're experiencing, some experiences will feel like a stretch, but if you haven't learned how to stretch, that could feel painful. So if you're not someone who constantly wants to grow and expand, you might start to experience encouragement and criticism as bullying or as emotionally manipulative. But there are times, and I think we talked about this last time, where we're dealing with a highly manipulative person, so a narcissist, has the ability to really expose our deeper vulnerabilities, maybe in inappropriate situations. So I think it takes a lot of self-awareness, but I would suggest that sitting with someone else, to get that type of reflection and feedback. And I don't mean a work colleague, I mean someone professional, a coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist, someone who actually has been trained to hold the space that you are trying to navigate. Not someone who's going to just be an echo chamber for you and amplify what's happening in your story.
I mean, I think that's brilliant. And I really think that resets.
Right.
So think of someone who's been in the same high pressure job for years. They used to love it, but now they wake up exhausted, anxious, and disconnected. What is the emotional impact of staying in a toxic work environment for too long?
How do we know it's really a toxic work environment? If you love the job initially, and then what happened is you just got bored over time, or you lost your creativity, you lost your drive, you're not motivated anymore, you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Remember one saying: only the student gets bored, the master can chop wood forever. Chopping wood, carrying water. That is reality. Now, if we are stuck in a space where we used to get a kick out of what we were doing, and then that kick starts to become less and less over time, and then now we're actually up against our own limitation, our own unconscious content that should be looked into. It shouldn't become the reason why you start looking for another job. You should probably start to have that coaching space or that self-reflective space where you start to figure out what's really going on underneath the surface. Because you're probably not exhausted. You've probably been pretending in your job to be a certain person. And the question is, do you have enough self-awareness and enough courage to reflect on that? Who have you been performing as? And then see what happens from there.
Yeah, again, I think that's so insightful. I remember an expression that comes to mind is that, when you go, you take yourself with you. And I think that really rings really true for me.
There's a great saying. The only Zen you get at the top of the mountain is the Zen that you take with you. There is nowhere else you can go where your mind doesn't follow. And so unless you deal with your mind, unless you train your mind, someone else is going to be controlling it. They describe the experience of the human as being in a chariot with 5 horses, which are the 5 senses. The mind and the emotions are the reins and the desires. And then there's the charioteer, who's the driver, which is supposedly the buddhi, the intellect, the light there. But you are the witness, you are the passenger. And unless you train your mind, the horses will just go in the direction of wherever they desire. You walk past a candy store, they're going in for sugar. Is that healthy? No. Is it good for you? Probably not. Will you be tempted every single time you walk past the candy store? Probably. What happens to the rest of your day, your body, your health, your mind? You have to train your mind, period. There is just no two ways about it.
So moving on. So a high-performing employee like Priya is always saying yes to late nights, to extra tasks, to emotional support roles for others. Why do some high performers struggle to set boundaries at work, and what can they do to begin protecting their energy without guilt?
Sometimes the model of the Enneagram here comes in quite useful. So someone who's a helper is often a type 2. And a type 2 has trouble saying no and enforcing boundaries. So what happens is they get value by being that supportive person. Their identity is built around that value. The identity is built around, well, I can help people. I know what they need. I know what they want. And I know before they know. And that's true. They have such sensitivity to people that they know what the other person needs before the other person is aware of it. And so they feel very valued when they are seen that way. But what part is being seen is their performer, is their personality, not themselves. So a type 2 needs to start looking at what are their needs? What do they need? And can they say no? And can they be comfortable with the guilt? And I put that in air quotes because it's not true guilt. It's just the guilt that the ego personality is playing with you around so that you keep giving it what it wants, right? Candy for the horses.
So, picture a small team under pressure to hit targets. Tension is high. How can leaders in this environment create a sense of emotional safety so people don't shut down or become defensive?
Yeah. So this is where the leader has to try to become the buffer for stress towards their team. So the leader must do their best to actually hold most of the experience of stress so that their reaction to their team is not a knee-jerk reaction, but tempered, so that the team can still get down to work without feeling that they've just been struck by a whip. And this is really challenging because I experience stress myself. I experience how, for example, AI has really taken over a lot of questions and answers that maybe people like you would go and ask a coach or ask HR or ask a therapist. But in fact, that means that what happens to coaches' businesses or therapists' businesses, and that stress comes in, and as a leader, my job is to do my best to hold that stress and then redirect our efforts or redirect our team towards how we can better serve or how we can better show up or whatever the case is in that situation. It is up to the leader. And I think that's where emotional capacity, emotional intelligence comes in.
So let's say you're a department head walking into a Monday meeting after a tough week. What tone should a conscious leader be aiming to set in these moments, especially when the team is already stressed?
So coming into the week after a tough week and weekend.
Correct.
So what was the last question in that?
So what tone should a conscious leader be aiming to set in these moments, especially when the team is already stressed?
So to have an effective team, you need capacity and you need groundedness. So calm, supportive, and clear. So clear direction. And if that isn't the case, maybe space to self-reflect with the team. What do you need? How can I support you in achieving X, Y, Z? We know our goal is this, or we know our target is this. What do you need in order to achieve that? Is it time? Is it space? Is it my time? What is it?
And I love that, because could I suggest something? Could it be up to the leader to decide? Sometimes it's not about the stick, but about creating a little bit of space so that the team can fill that.
I mean, the reward, the punishment and reward model is, I don't know how to describe it. It's callous in its description, but it is true. So punishment would be like discipline, reward would be the benefit that you get, maybe a bonus. But within that, how do we find our balance? And a lot of the time, we don't give enough space. We don't create enough space to reset our nervous system, to ground ourselves. We are often in this performative mindset, and it's difficult to get out of. So don't judge yourself if you find yourself in it. I recognize it in myself all the time. And the challenge is to just pause, recognize it, and lean the other way. Lean into what is the opposite of that? What would happen if you didn't step into that performative role? And you don't have to go overboard, just slightly lean the opposite direction. I think space and time are crucial.
So now I can't wait to hear the answer to this one. So, so managers are busy, but let's say a team lead has only 5 minutes a day to focus on team well-being. What's one specific, practical thing they can do to support emotional or mental health without adding more to their plate?
And if you're having one-on-one meetings with these
one-on-one
5 minutes with each person,
or
5 minutes altogether.
Yes.
5 minutes altogether would be extremely challenging. It would be a question like, how are you guys doing? How can I support you? What do you need? Please tell me. I think it would be the same in a one-on-one. I would give a little bit more time into how are you doing? What's happening? How are you feeling? And how can I support you?
Imagine two colleagues, Lisa and Theo, who are completely different. Lisa is detail-focused and cautious. Theo is spontaneous and big picture. They clash constantly. How can people like this build healthier working relationships?
The more we understand about ourselves, the more we realize we have to have compassion because we don't really understand ourselves. The more compassion we have for ourselves, the more compassion we start to have for others. When we start to realize that everyone is not like us, that some people process things differently. Some people are able to think fast and in a certain way, while others do need to focus on the detail. And that difference doesn't mean good or bad. It just means some people are good at some things and other people are good at other things. And if we understand each other's differences, we can play to those strengths. And if we understand each other's weaknesses, we can either take things off their plate when we recognize them, if I'm good at something, or if it is, we can encourage and we can teach how do we strengthen those weaknesses.
So in a fast-paced environment, colleagues often misunderstand each other and small tensions escalate. What role does emotional intelligence play in reducing conflict and improving productivity?
Without emotional capacity, without emotional intelligence, we will react to the emotion like the horse wanting the sugar. And so we will probably start doing things that potentially don't even add 1% to the effectiveness of what the outcome it is you're trying to achieve. If you are able to sit still in the discomfort, in the experience of stress, in the experience of emotional turmoil, whatever it is in that moment, if it's anger or if it's anxiety, whatever it is, if you're able to sit with that and pause and experience without letting your mind try to fix the feeling, that space will open up eventually some creativity and flow. So our goal is to always focus on what are the top 3 tasks using the Pareto principle that's going to move the needle. The 20% over the 80%. The research shows that 20% of what we do actually creates 80% of the outcome, and 80% is just noise, creating the 20%, which really can just fall off your plate. All your attention should be going to that 20%. But how do you know what that 20% is if your mind is clouded and if you knee-jerk reacting to everything? So emotional intelligence, which starts with emotional awareness, which is self-awareness, allows you to start to create a gap between stimulus and response. How Viktor Frankl creates that. Between stimulus and response is a gap, and that is the gap of freedom. That is the ability to choose, to pause, to say, is this actually useful or not? And if you've started something, to stop and go, I don't need to complete this just because I started it if I've realized this is the wrong direction.
Now, the next one is, might have happened to me once or twice. So, so let's say Maria walks away from meetings feeling emotionally drained, even if nothing bad happened. What should someone like Maria be paying attention to in those moments, and what might it be pointing to internally?
If that is happening, and really if nothing happened, Maria needs therapy or Maria needs coaching. That is the bottom line. You cannot get an answer for what you're asking on ChatGPT. You cannot get it by reading a book. You need space so that you can start to unravel the layers of your personality, Maria's personality in this case, that she is reacting to, which starts with delving into her past. Most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want to look into their past because they think their past is behind them. And that is just a misunderstanding of perception and memory. So what we need is more openness in the personal development space and this our self-understanding within our own psychology. So that saying, know thyself, that should become a cornerstone of, was it Maria?
Yes.
Of Maria's value system, so that she can start to live a life that is liberated from her own sabotage.
Some leaders are technically brilliant, but completely unaware of how they affect their teams. Why is self-awareness such a non-negotiable skill for effective leadership? And how can someone begin developing it?
So some people are brilliant, you're right. And the challenge is they will actually probably find it very difficult to lean into emotional awareness because of that brilliance, and because of the success that they get in the world from it. But eventually it catches up to everyone. And I don't want to maybe make our Wednesday a bit gloomy, but everyone dies. And eventually we have to face our own mortality and our own choices in life and how we lived, how we showed up. And when it comes to that end, there will be a time where we have this self-reckoning and we start to let go of our armor. And often that brilliance starts to fade, and all we're left with is ourself, our soul, and maybe it's a little bit too late then. So my suggestion around self-awareness is that anyone can learn it. It is challenging to learn. It is effort. We have two choices in every moment. We can chase pleasure, or we can look at what is really healthy for us. They often feel like they go in two different directions. The one is instant and has often a negative outcome over time. The other one is very difficult, but has a positive outcome over time. And you might think that that is an easy choice to make. But if you are directed by your wild horses and you have no control over yourself, over your senses, over those emotions, and not control, it's more like the ability to just feel without reacting, then that first choice of pleasure actually becomes the go-to, and we never choose the good choice, which is about health, about balanced relationships, and living from that place of virtue.
You know, you really got me thinking. You've opened my sort of eyes about something here. And what I would say is that, would you say if someone is just naturally brilliant, be it a technical brilliance or naturally gifted in a certain area, they don't really need to develop the skill of self-awareness or sensitivity towards others in order to progress with what their goals are? And in that pursuit, that is perhaps one of, you know, the reasons why self-awareness perhaps in highly capable people develop, is just a question. But if that's the case...
You mean is lacking?
Yes, is lacking.
Yeah.
Even if it's the case, wouldn't it be great to couple technical
Hugely.
brilliance with...
Hugely.
Because then surely that's the ultimate, really.
Yeah. So something that comes easy.
Yes.
Yes, great. That becomes maybe your direction. But is that why you were here? Just to become a product, like a machine, producing stuff? Surely not. That cannot be your purpose in life. So there must be another dimension to you. And my suggestion would be to start digging into that, so that your life becomes deeper and richer and fuller, so that by the end, the experience is something that you reflect back on with warmth, comfort, and joy.
So to follow up, I don't want to let this one go. So to follow up on that again, so then one would say, well, I was technically brilliant in my career, in what I had to do, but wouldn't it have been so far better had I left that environment or workplace in a better state, because I was perhaps more aware of others and created a better space, rather than just delivering on making money or being successful in my career and walking away at that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So picture an employee who seems to overreact in situations that don't seem like a big deal to others. Could this be a result of unresolved personal trauma affecting their workplace behavior? And how should this be addressed gently and productively?
I think this sounds like Maria again. So depending on who that person is to you, if you are the one that sees that and you wonder, like, what could be going on, if you have that sensitivity and that awareness and you go, I think my friend is reacting to something because what just happened seems way out of proportion. Again, it does depend. Just listening to someone like that, you know, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? If it is a manager that has the budget or capacity, this would be an ideal time for someone to start coaching, because that person is in dire need and there is more than likely some trauma, some belief system that is driving her narrative, and that, you know, when she sees a blue door with a black handle, she freaks out all the time. For whatever reason, she was locked in a cupboard when she was a child, and, you know, old patterns are part of your personality. So unless you learn how to resolve them and rebuild them, which will lead to a different self-understanding, which is so important, she will remain in that pattern.
Imagine you're working with someone who constantly undermines you with passive-aggressive comments or subtle sabotage. How should you handle this kind of behavior without creating more conflict or drama?
So interpretation is very important. If someone is so small that they are really trying to sabotage you, like really, and that is unusually the case, more than likely you are reacting to your own lenses and amplifying it, because no one can really manipulate you if you are in a healthy psychology. And so I think what we need to pay more attention to is our own inner trigger and our own self-reflection of what are we reacting to in that moment. And if there are times where you need to enforce a boundary, it becomes natural. It's not a big fight to enforce a boundary. It's just no, and walk away. You don't need to prove anything to anyone else, because if you think you do, then actually you've got the same problem as they have, and all you're going to do is play ping pong with them until one of you gets tired, which should be already a mirror to see where's the problem lying.
I think that's such an important point. And I think often I would say in a situation like that, perhaps due to ego, it's quite easy to get triggered and to react in that way. So deep breaths. Okay, now think of someone who's been overlooked for promotions, rarely gets feedback, and feels invisible in their workplace. What would you say to someone who feels stuck, unseen, or undervalued in their job?
So is it a fact? We'd have to check. Is it a fact that they are overlooked? Is it a fact that they are unseen? Or is it their own psychology that's playing through and that's how they're interpreting everything? I would say coaching again could be very useful there. If it is a fact, I would then want to understand, what is this person's behavior? Are they not proactive? What is their engagement like with the people that they are wanting the promotion from? Are they just doing their job and then clocking out at 5? Because I can tell you something that most employees don't get is that as an owner of a business, no one is more invested than the owner. And the owner is very aware of how invested his staff is or her staff is, because they're seeing who's picking up slack, who's doing the extra bit that is actually helping. So it depends on what this person's behavior is like, how they show up in their role. I would think that having a coach, self-reflecting, understanding the situation really deeply would give a clearer understanding of how to move forward and how to navigate that environment or situation.
I feel we've touched on this a little bit in previous questions, but I really do want to flesh this out a little bit more. So someone is burnt out, constantly fantasizing about quitting, but unsure if it's the job or just exhaustion. Is burnout always a sign that it's time to leave, or could it be a deeper invitation to look inward first?
Burnout is rarely the time to leave. Burnout is just a matter of you not understanding your own boundaries, your own capacity, and also how to recharge. You shouldn't be burnt out. You shouldn't be able to get burnt out if you are living in a balanced and healthy way. If you're working 18 hours a day, you're only getting 3 hours of sleep, and you're doing that constantly, there is something wrong with your balance. It's got nothing to do with the job. You have to create boundaries where you say, well, this is what the job requires. And I suppose parents would look at me and go, well, I'm afraid you must not be a parent to know that that job doesn't exist as a parent. But there is something to be said for your own discipline and leaning too far into other people's needs, whether it be your employee, your staff, or your child. So the question around burnout is if it's time to leave or not. I think it's time to do some real deep soul searching, and the grass is not greener on the other side. So, where some people see failure, other people see opportunity. How can that be? That shouldn't be able to exist if it's an actual fact. So the question is, can you give yourself enough space to delve into some soul searching, to start to see where are you betraying yourself? Where are you sabotaging yourself? And how can you learn how to find your balance again?
So, final question.
Okay.
Let's say an ambitious employee believes that to be successful, they must constantly hustle, be available 24/7, and never show vulnerability. What's one belief about success at work that you think needs to be challenged, and why?
At different stages of the business, that hustle might be necessary, because if you are just starting out as an entrepreneur, it's probably just you, and you have to do everything, and balance is extremely challenging. But what does success look like then? Success to you might look different to someone who's been in business for 5 or 10 or 15 years. So you need to understand for yourself, or you need to define for yourself, what is an appropriate level of success for where you are, and are you moving in the right direction? Is success just about the outcome, or is it about who you're becoming while you are in this experience of building the business or of whatever the role is that you're doing? Hustling 24/7, again, I think balance, guys, it's really crucial, because someone is going to get it in the neck. And either it's self-imploded, or it's towards someone you care about. So think carefully about not choosing balance over success. Balance should lead ultimately to success. You shouldn't need to kill yourself to reach that level of success. Because if you are doing that, then clearly that's about ego. It's about nothing else. Yeah. When success is measured through the eyes of the ego, we are driven in that 24/7, 7 days a week mindset. I think it depends on person to person and situation to situation. And so I would lean into find your balance. And from there, you can probably get a better assessment of what's happening.
Warren, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Your ability to unpack these complex emotional experiences in such a grounded, accessible way is truly appreciated. If today's session resonated with you, or if you're facing challenges in your work or personal life and want deeper support, I really encourage you to reach out to Warren. You can learn more and book a session directly at integrativecoaching.co.za. That's integrativecoaching.co.za. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.
Thank you.